All right, Chrysler's out of the garage. It's inspection day. Let's go. So, welcome everybody to Make It and Break It. My name's Andrew, and today we're finally gonna get our Chrysler 300C inspected and street legal. So, first things first, before I go and drive all the way to the inspection site and waste my own time, I'm gonna do one little quick run around, make sure that the car is operating relatively correctly, especially given that we've always had something new show up on this car every time we've tried to drive it. So we're gonna give it a little bit of a drive around. Oh yeah, the park assist system still needs to be serviced. Not surprising since we haven't fixed anything on it. You might be able to tell or not tell in the background. In fact, if I did my job right, you can't tell. But we don't have a clunking in the front end anymore. That is because we did fix our sway bar bushing. So that happened, I think, in the last Ute episode, where we pulled off the front left wheel and found that our sway bar bushing had been pushed out, and that has really quieted up the front end here. So that's been nice to see. So far everything seems to be working pretty well. I've got to remember off the top of my head here that this car is in fact not any of my much smaller and lighter cars, which much better brakes, and stopping distances are much longer in this thing. So I'll have to keep that in mind as we go here. But it looks like everything's functioning pretty well. So I think we're ready to go, and we'll go make sure we have all of our paperwork and everything, and go drive ourselves to the inspection site. Catch you guys there. All right, so we just got finished with our State Patrol VIN inspection. Everything went fine, smooth. We managed to get all the right paperwork so that they're not angry at us or anything. That's been cool. We did overflow coolant again. So I'm not sure what's going on with that at this point. I think there's like a little pinhole, or my coolant reservoir cap or something is loose, because the temperatures are fine. I'm not overheating the car, but coolant's coming out and boiling, so I'm overflowing, which makes me think I don't have any pressure in my cooling system, which is what keeps it from boiling and overfilling. Or it could be that the coolant is just really bad in this car, and it doesn't have a boiling point that's as high as normal coolant. So it could be a couple things. We're gonna do a full coolant flush, maybe a swap here of our bottle, and take a look at that stuff once we get this car back into the shop and or my garage, and we can do that. But so first thing off, check on the VIN inspection. Next thing we got to do is we got to go run to an emissions testing system. I've already checked my OBD2 scanner, and all of the indicators are showing okay, which means we're ready to go. And if we get there and they do it just fine for us, we're free and clear. And then this thing can break down after that, and I'll be okay with it because I got all the paperwork that says we're good. So I'll catch up with you guys after that, and maybe do a little bit of a time lapse of the drive or something. I don't know. Who cares? Bye. All right, so we didn't quite make it to the inspection station for emissions. We were a block away, and then the check engine light for high idle shows up again. Also, when I was checking out the car in several parking lots trying to fix the high idle, I popped open the coolant reservoir cap, and that cap is like the rubber and bushings on it are all, or the rubber like sealing surfaces on it are all jacked up. So that might be what's causing us some overflow and boiling issues. So I reset the car, and currently it's not throwing codes yet, but I mean, give it time. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm gonna let it sit and hopefully reset and get all the IM stuff ready to go. So I might be able to get that done today. I'm gonna take a quick trip to the hardware or the parts store so I can maybe get a reservoir cap for my 300C, and maybe that'll stop that problem. Hopefully then by then it's cooled down enough that when I go back and check everything, it'll be ready for an emissions test. So wish me luck. All right, so back in the garage, you can see the hood is up and open, which means we have codes. So on the drive home, I stopped at the gas station, picked up some extra coolant because we were leaking out all over the place. I picked up some extra, that is a huge fucking spider. Picked up some extra tools so I could try and work on this thing in the parking lot of a Shell gas station. Didn't end up working. I tried freaking out the computer in the car, which is how I fixed the idle air or the idle problem the first time around. What I did is I basically disconnected the battery, reset the computer by reconnecting the battery, pulling fuse 20, fuse 11. It's a 20 amp fuse. I think I've shown you guys this before. And then once that's all done, I pulled the connection for the throttle so that the computer didn't see a throttle connection. And what it does is it freaks the computer out entirely and causes it to reset its learning, and basically redoes everything for the throttle part of the computer learning. It also redoes fueling and stuff. So I did that, and last time I did that, nothing showed up. Like it just essentially reset it after it freaked out about the throttle not being connected. When it connected back up, there were no codes or no pending codes, and that was what we did to fix it in lieu of today. And on the drive home, it was throwing a bunch of different codes, and I'll show you like the readout of my Bluetooth driver here. So it's showing a bunch of codes, and it actually started throwing a crankshaft position sensor code at the very end, which, well, it didn't throw that code yet. So we got it here, and it was, it had a check engine light for, it didn't yet have a fully on check engine light, but it had the pending codes here minus the crank position sensor code. So at that point, I talked to you guys a little bit earlier, went and got a new cap, which is on there. See, that thing's on there now. So hopefully our leaking stops. I think it will, based on kind of the setup of this. It looks like we were leaking into the overflow, and then that overflow is leaking out. But I came back, and the car had been running great, so I put that on, put in some more coolant. It's hot, so it's at its most expanded at this point. So the next, so as this thing cools down, it will again continue to go back down in the bottle, and we'll fill it up again to the proper level. But I come back and I try to turn the car on because I pulled up my mini scanner, and all but one of the readouts was done, the IM readiness check or whatever you call it, which basically says if you're ready to go or not. And in Washington, you can have one readout incomplete if all the rest of them are good and you got no check engine lights. But I went to go turn the car on, and it just cranks, and it just sits there and cranks and cranks and cranks. So I turn it up, so I crank it for a bit, and then turn the key back off, and crank it for more, turn the key back off. So I do the key dance, which is kind of how you can get your car to tell you what the codes are. And a new code was showing up, and it was a crank position sensor, and that code was new from when I had just parked the car to when I when I just parked the car to go get a new radiator cap. Which is weird, because I would think if the crank position sensor was going out, I would have seen at least a pending code for it before I parked the car. Because it's not like the crank position sensor is just going to blow out on one parking. So right now, I am a little befuddled. Sorry for the big words, everyone. I get my vocabulary gets increased as I get angrier. Wow, just all the spiders around here. I need to kill all of these things. Okay. Anyway, so I'm a little befuddled right now, and my working theory is this. So the last time we had weird codes show up was the first time that the overflow here had overflown all over everything. So my guess is there's some sort of wiring bank in here that really doesn't like that moisture, or just in general the car really doesn't like the moisture showing up in there. So what I'm gonna do is let the car sit overnight, let it cool back down, then we can refill the cooling system to the proper level, and we can also test the theory here, because I just don't see how the crankshaft position. I just don't see how the crankshaft position sensor, which is on the 5.7 Hemis, it's kind of over here on the passenger side, on the kind of the back side of the engine, right near the transmission. That's kind of where your crankshaft position sensor is. I find it hard to believe that out of all the times we've started and run this car and done all this sort of stuff, that just now we get a crankshaft position sensor to blow out, as opposed to every other time or when we've done all the other stuff. So that's kind of my guess. My guess is that the electronics are bad. Well, it's a Chrysler, so of course the electronics are bad. My guess is the electronics in here really take poorly to coolant overflowing, and that's what's causing our weird crankshaft error code, and what's causing our hard starting everything else. So I'm just gonna let it sit here, dry out, cool off, and we'll come back in the morning and check it out, and hopefully we don't have to replace the sensor. So we'll see you guys then. Okay, so the next morning, got a new radiator cap on, and we're refilled back up to normal levels since we're cold, and that's when you're supposed to refill your radiator. So before I close everything up, we're gonna do a quick start and see if those codes are gone. I did pull the battery, so the code should be gone, but yesterday, when it was doing so, the crank position sensor circuit code, oh god, dropping a lot of crap down here. The crank position sensor code, when I cleared codes yesterday, immediately showed up again. So we'll see what happens here. Hopefully everything works fine. We can get our computer ready for an emissions test again and get it tested today, because we have just today to get that done. Otherwise I'm gonna have to go get another pass and whatever. It's really super annoying. So let's go try that out. Face. Okay, so the code didn't show back up, which, if it was going to be a problem, you'd think it would be a real problem, and show back up, especially with the issues we were seeing. So I'm not sure exactly what it is. It might just be that there's a bunch of power cables in here and they're super sensitive when I overflow my coolant reservoir tanks. Hopefully we figured that out. So that could just be the case. Otherwise, I'm not sure what's going on here yet. It could be the crank position sensor, but that was the first time it had thrown any sort of code or had any sort of starting issues at all. So I feel like that's not necessarily the most likely situation. So what we're gonna do now is hop back in this thing, get everything ready, and go get ourselves ready for our emissions test. Hopefully nothing else breaks. Okay, so obviously we're not currently at the licensing office, nor are we at the emissions testing set location, which means codes showed back up. So we had lean codes show up in banks 1 and 2, which we had earlier, but those went away eventually, so maybe those will go away or not. And we had our high idle come back again. So my working theory right now is that we're having a grounding issue. There is a ground, and this might be contributed by the overflow of the coolant reservoir. So there is a ground in front of the coolant reservoir area where it overflows, and that there's actually wet underneath it. So my thought was maybe that had some issues and was causing some of our electrical weirdness to going on. So while I was pulling one ground apart, I took apart 3 other relatively easily accessible grounds, or 2 other easily accessible grounds. So there's another ground that's kind of right here. So that's a grounding strap, or a ground location. Let's see if we can get it to focus in. Yeah, right there. And this is behind the headlight. So this is basically the same position as the one in front of the driver's side headlight, which I think might be causing our issue, because we start having a lot of weird connection issues when we had coolant overflow. So I actually pulled these apart, took some sandpaper to the ground connection, just clean them off, make sure they're nice and clean, and then put a little bit of grease, dielectric grease on them, and reassembled them. And then there's a ground right up here next to the light, that ground location. I also did the same thing, I cleaned it up. That's, I think, the main ground for the power distribution center here. So we're gonna see if that fixes some of our issues here, or it could break it too, but I think this could only do us good things. There's a couple other grounds behind the engine, and there's one, what looks like over here. So I'd kick over a fan. You can see right in here. That's a grounding location, grounding mount. It's pretty much exactly the opposite as this one. And at least that's what it looks like to me. And I can't actually find anything running to it. So I don't know if we're missing some grounding straps. There's some pretty shady mechanic fixes going on in this car in general. So maybe they just rewired it or grounded it in another weird spot, and that's why we're getting weird issues. But yeah, so we're gonna put some stuff back together here. I got to all the grounds that I can get to with pulling the bumper. So I'm gonna go put everything back together again. We're gonna turn this thing on and see if those codes can not show up again. Okay, well, yet again, a disappointing couple days trying to get this thing street legal. At this point, I may just give up on making it street legal and get straight to the good stuff or something. I don't know. I'm gonna have to consider it. Okay, right now we have not an awesome setup. So I'm gonna use my quick and easy OBD reader because, well, it takes less time than my phone does to get the Bluetooth one up and going. So we currently have a P0335, which is crankshaft position sensor A circuit. So something's wrong with the circuit on our crankshaft position sensor. Okay. And then in the pending codes, we also have the P0507, idle air higher than expected. Not exactly sure what's wrong with this car at this point. Getting a lot of things that seem to indicate there's some real electrical grounding issues in all likelihood, or something wrong with our power control and electrical system in general. The car does also randomly die. I don't know if I showed you that on the drive over when I thought I was going to get it inspected the first time around. The car does, if you're stopped somewhere, it will just die out of nowhere. That could be when a fan's kicking on. It could be a lot of things, but that says to me but it doesn't like sputter and die. It just shuts off. So there's some sort of electrical problem going on, and maybe more than that. So if the crankshaft position sensor could cause some of these problems, you'd think it'd run rough instead of die. The crankshaft position sensor could cause some of these problems. You'd think it would run rough instead of die, necessarily, because the positions are off and the computer's not sure what's going on, rather than just immediately shut off. But it could definitely be causing this hard starting issue. Watch this. So that actually started this time around, but and there you see it just died. So it's been doing that now much more regularly than it was before. It did it like once before. So now that's happened 3 times today, where it'll just be there and it'll just die, just kill itself. So and I've even tried, there's apparently if some of your wiring's bad, it won't die if the AC's on. I've tried that. I'm not sure if that is actually a real thing or not. So there's apparently a lot more work to do on this car. Alright everybody, so yet another unsuccessful attempt at getting this thing street legal. We got it halfway there. State Patrol inspection is done, which means I have 60 days to get this thing registered, or that inspection is no longer worthwhile. Which means we gotta, and we have to crank on this thing anyway. I have other projects I need to get done by the end of the summer. So we're gonna have to start working a lot of time. I'm not sure what is exactly wrong. I just showed you a clip where it would start up again, and then the revs would go everywhere and they'd just die. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. Do a bunch of research. If anyone knows what's going on, put it in the comment section down below. I'm real interested, because this is not behaving in a consistent manner, which really does make me think it's electrical, because if it was a weird ground or like a periodically grounding connection or something like that, then, or a periodically shorted connection, then that could cause all sorts of weird issues and cause all sorts of weird behavior. But maybe a crankshaft position sensor could do that. I'm not sure. So I got a lot of work to do and research to do, and we'll pick this back up in the next video where I try and fix this thing for the final time-ish. So yeah, a little disappointing episode today, but hopefully you guys learned something and maybe had a little fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. My name's Andrew. This is Make It and Break It, and our Project Ute is still broken. But if you like this video, hit like. We've got this and an RX-8 project and a motorcycle project, which I'm just about to kick off here because I got to finish that in a couple weeks. So a bunch of projects on, so if you like that sort of work or some 3D printing, we're working on 3D printing a center console and some other pieces for this and everything else we work on. Subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so that you can get notified when we put out a new video. New videos at least 2 times a week, and we're looking to try and put it up more than that. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. My name's Andrew. Thankful I get to do this, and hopefully you guys enjoy watching it. So until next time, do keep our channel motto in mind. Don't make it hard, make it up. And we'll go see what we can make up on this project. Catch you guys later. Okay, garage door. Let's close that so no one steals all of our crap real quick.